Part 52. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 511. The United States Hexagon, Ministry of National Defense. Deputy Minister, Li Qing's Liaoning fleet has entered the Red Sea. The staff hurried into the office of Deputy Minister William. William raised his head in astonishment. What? What did you say? The staff nodded solemnly. The Liaoning fleet of the Java Chinese Autonomous Region has entered the Red Sea and is heading towards the Suez Island Canal. William was silent for a moment. It seems that Li Qing is serious this time. The Turks blackmailed $1 billion, which was actually instructed by the United States. They tried to use this method to prevent the variant from returning to China. Although the Goat Country War is in full swing now, they have to take time to deal with this matter. For the United States, there are only two countries in the world that pose a greater threat to it. One is the Great Mao that inherited most of the legacy of the Mao Bear, and the other is China, which is rising in the east. William looked at the materials brought by the staff with a solemn expression. The materials contain the route of the Liaoning fleet. What are the reactions of the neighboring countries that the Liaoning fleet passed through? No reaction. William frowned. In fact, no reaction was the biggest reaction. The United States noticed the movement as soon as the Liaoning fleet set off. They misjudged the reactions of the neighboring countries and thought that the countries that the Liaoning fleet passed through would definitely block or drive them away. Unexpectedly, there was no such reaction. Some countries even provided supplies. William gritted his teeth. He suddenly found that the plan of the United States to return to the Asia-Pacific in the later planning was reasonable. The Asia-Pacific region was a little out of the control of the United States. Deputy Minister, should we send a message to the pyramid and ask them to block the Liaoning fleet in the Suez-Riel Canal? The staff member whispered. William raised his head and glared at him when he heard it. Do you think Li Qing is a fool? Now the two sides are still in the honeymoon period, and no one wants to destroy the situation. The Turks have already taken action once. If the pyramid takes action again, it will tear the face apart. Damn China! China asked Li Qing to do this, which really caught the weakness of the United States. Li Qing is an important part of the United States military's future plan and deployment. They don't want to break up with them, not to mention that Li Qing has saved the lives of a number of military leaders on the surface, otherwise it would be very dangerous if the plane really crashed into the Pentagon. Do you think Li Qing will really fight? William couldn't see through Li Qing's thoughts for a while. The staff was very excited. This was the time for him to show his ability in front of the deputy minister. Minister William, I think Li Qing's threat is more significant. The Turkic Navy is not a vegetarian either. The number of warships far exceeds that of the Liaoning fleet. I think Li Qing will never fight. William nodded after listening to the staff's analysis. He didn't believe that Li Qing would fight. The gap is there. Whoever fights is a fool. If the pyramid asks, let it go. William knocked on the table and waved away the staff directly. If you can't even fight, why bother with Li Qing? The staff nodded and walked out. At this time, not only the United States, but almost all the countries that received the news were secretly paying attention to this inconspicuous fleet, the Liaoning fleet. They also wanted to see how the situation developed. They all knew that this was not a conflict between the Java Chinese Autonomous Province and the Turks, but represented the remote game between China and the United States. They all wanted to see the cards of both sides through this incident to facilitate their own countries to make strategic adjustments. The Turks held an emergency meeting, and it was obvious that they had also received the news that the Liaoning fleet was coming. How dare he? Why is he so arrogant and wants to attack us from a long distance? The Admiral of the Navy slammed the table and roared. In his opinion, what Li Qing did was simply daring. He has nuclear weapons. The General of the Army glanced at him contemptuously. The Admiral of the Navy glared back, let alone a small province, Even if the whole Java came, we are not afraid. He has long-range nuclear weapons. The general of the army crossed his legs. The admiral's face flushed red, and he continued, "Don't talk about the New World. It's just a transnational illegal organization. Do we, the Turks, need to tolerate it? He has nuclear weapons carried by Dongfeng Express. Are you done yet?" The admiral finally couldn't stand it anymore. This guy has been against him for more than a day or two. Now he is confronting him in front of the president, which makes him very embarrassed. The Turkish president stroked his forehead. He was very tired from running around for the past 2 days. If it weren't for this incident, he should have been catching up on his sleep in bed. The Ministry of Commerce, the Ministry of Tourism, and the Ministry of Agriculture, the 3 most important departments of the Turks, had problems at the same time, which made him very upset. You have to take the main responsibility for this matter. Didn't I tell you to handle it properly? The president pointed at the admiral and scolded him. Now all kinds of means have made the contradictions of the entire Turkic society full, especially the farmers in Konya province have been making trouble because of the agricultural product incident, and they are protesting everywhere with flags. You old man eat 1/3 of the $1 billion US, and now you are still talking like this. The admiral kept complaining. Mr. President, we don't need to be afraid of them. They only have a few warships, and we have more. And they have already reached our doorstep. If we retreat, how will other countries view us? The admiral thought for a moment and said. This sentence hit the president's heart. As the president, he has more to consider. If they stay in the dark, the Turkic status in the international community will decline a lot, and the surrounding countries will also look down on it. Then fight, transfer the Black Sea Fleet. The president gritted his teeth and made a decision. He didn't believe it. It was okay to be afraid of Russia and the United States, but if he was afraid of even a small warlord, then his presidency would be over. The Turkish people would not agree to let a coward be president. Okay, I'll arrange it immediately, the admiral said excitedly. In his eyes, the Turkic was bound to win. With such a huge disparity in combat power, if he couldn't win this naval battle, he would just find a rope to hang himself. President, is it a bit hasty? The general of the army hesitated and persuaded him quickly. From the beginning, he didn't agree to blackmail New World for $1 billion. For a country like his, it was best to remain neutral between the United States and China. Unfortunately, his suggestion could not stop other high-ranking officials who were blinded by their own interests, and now this war must be fought. Haste? Humph, they are at the gate, and you, a coward, still want to hide at home. The admiral of the navy felt that he was doing it again. Besides, they dare not use nuclear weapons, and neither the United States nor China will allow it. You are gambling with the lives of the Turks. The general of the army stood up angrily. Okay, I have decided on this matter, don't say anything more. The president looked at the general of the army with dissatisfaction. The people around him also persuaded him, and the general of the army shook his head and finally sat down. The admiral of the navy, however, looked at the general of the army provocatively as if he had won a battle. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value. I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 512. The Liaoning fleet has successfully passed through the Suez Canal. Pyramid notified Beautiful Country in advance, and Beautiful Country agreed to let them pass. They had no reason to stop them, and they were even a little happy in their hearts, because the relationship between the pyramids and the Turks was not so harmonious. To be exact, relations among the surrounding countries in the Middle East are not so harmonious. This is exactly the strategy of the Beautiful Country. What the Beautiful Country wants is a chaotic Middle East, so that it can intervene in disputes between countries and seek benefits as the world's policeman. At this time, the Lion fleet officially entered the Mediterranean. The Liaoning fleet continued to march towards the Turks, and the atmosphere it brought became more and more solemn. Almost all eyes were focused here, and there was a slight sense of tension that a war was about to break out. Some casinos even privately opened handicaps to bet on whether this naval battle would break out or which side would win. The most famous one is the Las Vegas New World Casino's own handicap. The odds of the Lion fleet have reached 9-1. The gamblers also discussed a lot. Tisk tisk, New World will definitely win by buying its own Lion fleet, otherwise it will be even higher. I heard many people say that the Turks will win. Those who understand military affairs have released specific data analysis. Whether it is in terms of the number of warships, weapon ratios, or displacement tonnage, there is no possibility for the Lion fleet to win. Haha, you really don't understand anything. Why don't you analyze the invisible advantages of the New World? That is, if nothing else, the New World hotel's killers are no worse than those in the Middle East when it comes to carrying out terrorist attacks. This is a naval battle. I think the Turks have a better chance of winning. The gamblers hold different opinions. Some say that the Turks will win, while others say that since the New World dares to do this, it must have a backup plan. In terms of odds alone, most people bet on the Turks. Only a few gamblers had confidence in the New World. In addition, there were some unknown people who bet on the New World. Haha, I'll ask you one last time, won't you let me pass? Tian Yangshen gritted his teeth and looked at Attitude opposite. He has been negotiating with the other party in the past 2 days, but unfortunately the other party seems determined not to let the variant pass. Humph, you can do it in the past, but you can't miss a cent of $1 billion. Attitude stared at Tian Yangshen across the way fiercely. He knew that he was almost killed by the bombing, and this group of people must have been causing trouble, and there was always a fire in his heart. Tian Yangshen did not speak, but looked at Attitude coldly. Then there is nothing to talk about. I will burn 1 billion ghost coins to you. What did you say? When Attitude heard this, his anger instantly overwhelmed his reason, and he took out his pistol and pointed it at Tian Yangshen. The Tianyangyi brothers immediately pointed their guns at Attitude. Upon seeing this, the soldier behind Attitude also held a gun, opened the safety, and placed his finger nervously on the trigger. The atmosphere between the two parties was so solemn that one could hear their own heartbeats. Tian Yangshen waved his hand, asking the brothers behind him to put down their guns, and then stepped forward contemptuously. He directly raised Attitude's gun and put it between his eyebrows. Come on, shoot. As soon as you shoot, not only will your wife and daughter go down to accompany me, but all your blood relatives will go down to accompany me. Of course, after this incident is over, you will also go down and accompany me. There was no fear in Tian Yangshen's eyes, but some disdain for Attitude. You don't think they are really safe in the military camp, do you? Attitude gripped the handle of the gun, trying his best to suppress the thought of killing the opponent with one shot. He took a deep breath and suddenly smiled. You don't think that you can defeat us with a fleet of less than 10 ships, do you? You think it's 10 aircraft carriers? Yes, if you don't believe me, try it. The Turkic soldiers also laughed. They thought this was the best joke of the year. Tian Yangshen tilted his head and glanced at the Turks who were laughing at them. We'll see, don't jump into the sea crying. After saying that, he took the people away without looking back. However, Attitude slowly stopped smiling. He didn't know why the other party was so confident. What he is worried about now is his wife and daughter. Isn't it safe in the military camp? This doubt took root in his heart and sprouted. Tian Yangshen reported today's situation to his eldest brother Li Qing again. Brother, the other side still did not compromise and killed $1 billion. Li Qing shook his head. It seemed that the opponent really thought that he could not do anything to them, and he might also think that his Lion fleet could not defeat their Black Sea fleet. Then forget it and stick to the plan. Putting down the phone, Li Qing lit a cigarette and sneered. There are many ways to win a war. Just looking at the value of force is the most superficial. Sometimes the underlying things are the scariest. The next day, around 11 o'clock in the morning, approaching the Bosporus, the Turkic Black Sea Fleet had already assembled. The warships floated gently with the waves, and the sun shone on the deck as usual. The Turkic navy was not worried at all about the upcoming naval battle. They regarded this matter as a practical exercise. Some people even think that less than 10 ships may not be enough for them to launch a salvo. Hey, Mustafa, you have so many dark circles under your eyes. Are you too nervous and didn't take a break? Or you paid too much for the public rations? The captain joked, patting Mustafa on the shoulder. By the way, Ali seems to be worried these days, so I can't ask him. After this incident, ask him if anything happened at home. Mustafa nodded subconsciously, and his heart skipped a beat, as if he realized something. Could it be that Ali also? Okay, Captain, Mustafa nodded quickly. Okay, get ready, we'll be going to the Mediterranean soon. The captain laughed. This is a good opportunity to make a contribution. Mustafa looked at the dial. It was exactly 11:35, and there were still 10 minutes before the time specified by the man. Deputy Captain. Deputy Captain. The soldiers kept greeting each other, and Mustafa walked towards the armory. He felt extremely guilty about these people, but thinking of his 3-year-old daughter, he could only harden his heart. The door of the armory slowly opened. Ali, Mustafa suddenly saw a man standing in the armory. Mustafa? Why are you here? A trace of panic flashed across Ali's face. Oh, I'll check it out. Mustafa smiled stiffly. Me too, haha. The two looked at each other, and both stopped talking and fell silent, both absent-mindedly swinging some weapons. Ali seemed even more anxious, and looked at the time on his watch from time to time. Ali, have you been threatened? Mustafa's words directly shocked Ali's heart. He thought he was exposed, and immediately took out a pistol from the holster and pointed it at Mustafa. Calm down, Mustafa raised his hands and said in a calm tone. Then he took out a black bag from his pocket and put it on a table not far away, motioning Ali to take a look. Ali held the gun in one hand and carefully opened the black bag with the other hand, and a time bomb appeared in front of him. Mustafa, you too. Mustafa nodded. Now we are all on the same rope. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 513. Ali sat on the ground dejectedly. My wife and son have been arrested, there is no way. I must do this. In fact, the New World is very strict in doing things. 2 or even 3 people were directly found on each warship to ensure that the plan is foolproof. Mustafa drooped his eyelids and looked at his watch. There are 5 minutes left before the action begins. Have you thought about the escape route? The timer is only 10 minutes, and the bomb will explode on time at 12 o'clock. Ali pondered for a moment. I secretly left an inflatable boat to prevent accidents. Mustafa nodded. He also had a backup plan to ensure that he could survive this explosion. According to the amount of ammunition in the armory, if an explosion occurs, it should not directly sink the warship, but will cause a fire, causing the entire warship to lose its ability to sail directly. Time is up. Ali looked at the dial, took out the time bomb directly, pressed the red button and placed it on the ammunition. A series of actions without any hesitation. The lives of his wife and son are the most important. Ali looked at Mustafa and saw that he didn't move. He looked at him warily and slowly reached for the pistol on his waist. He didn't allow anyone to ruin this. This is the cleverness of the New World. With an extra insurance, it is hard to guarantee that no one will abandon his wife and children for the sake of justice. Mustafa sighed, picked up the time bomb on the table, pressed the red button, and put it together with the bomb just now. Ali was relieved when he saw this scene. Now the two of them have truly reached a consensus. No matter who tells it out, both of them will die. Let's go, we have to hurry up. Mustafa waved at Ali, and Ali followed him out of the armory and locked the door of the armory with the key. Two deputy captains, so you are here. The captain is looking for you too. A naval sergeant waved at the two. The two looked at each other and walked towards the control room. Huh? Mustafa, Ali, where have you been? We have passed the Mediterranean. The white-bearded captain looked at the two with some confusion. The battle was imminent, and the fact that the two vice-captains were not in the control room made people suspicious. Captain, didn't you ask me to ask Ali what was going on? Mustafa spread his hands innocently. Hey, I mean, after this battle, forget it, you should prepare for the battle first. This time we will make the Linnea fleet come and go. The captain shook his head and put aside his doubts. Mustafa and Ali looked at each other and breathed a sigh of relief. The entire Black Sea fleet was in an offensive formation, which looked very dense and a little imposing. At this time, Tuhachi, who was standing on the flagship, held a telescope and looked at the Black Sea fleet heading towards him. The officers behind him were sweating in their palms. After all, the gap in strength between the two sides was too large. General, the other side has entered the range of our missiles, should we take the initiative? The adjutant ran behind Tuhachi and suggested. Although the Linnea fleet had fewer warships, its power system and weapon equipment were much better than the Black Sea fleet with uneven models. Therefore, they have advantages in missile accuracy and artillery range. Wait, Tuhachi looked at his watch. There were still 5 minutes left before the time planned by Commander Li Cheng. Now almost all countries are paying attention to this naval battle, and even capable countries have observed it through real-time satellites. In the United States, Deputy Minister of Defense William frowned and looked at the fleets of both sides on the screen. What is the Linnea fleet waiting for? Why don't you use the weapon advantage to fight first? Not only was he puzzled about this matter, but the military advisors and staff behind him were also puzzled. Are you afraid? Tisk. Definitely not. I saw a bit like a medieval night duel, waiting for everyone to get ready. Naive, who still follows the spirit of chivalry now. William's face was solemn. With his understanding of Li Qing, things must not be that simple. China. Oh, fight? What are you thinking about, Brother Li? Qi Gang was so anxious that his thighs turned red. Let alone anything else, the 3 missile destroyers he sent him could make the other side cry for their parents with a round of missiles. Zhou glared at Qi Gang. There are so many leaders here, don't make a fuss. The conference room was full of senior officials of the general staff, who were also quite concerned about this matter. It can be said bluntly that Li Qing fought this naval battle for China. And the boss has already said that no matter whether he wins or loses, China will compensate Li Qing for his losses, without any discount. But now that they have entered the range and not fired a single shot, it really makes everyone a little anxious. Some European countries, especially those along the Mediterranean coast, are also very concerned about this naval battle at their doorstep. These are secondary. In fact, the people who are most concerned about this naval battle are the Turks. Some Turks are even standing on the coast and looking around, although they can't see anything. Have they started fighting? Hey, the Linnea fleet is doomed to fail. It's really ridiculous to try to stop a chariot with a mantis arm. That's right. I haven't heard of the Linnea fleet. We Turks haven't fought for so long. It seems that someone has forgotten our strength. The small Javanese country actually came to provoke us. Let's see how he dies this time. I heard it was a warlord in Java. Some Turkic civilians began to gather on the beach and discuss enthusiastically. Although they could not see the naval battle, they could not dispel their enthusiasm. The Chinese soldiers on the Liaoning fleet and the missile destroyers were also gearing up and were very excited. Since the self-defense counterattack against you, there has not been a large-scale war, let alone a naval battle. Especially the Navy, which has never encountered any naval battles, not even small encounters. They are often ridiculed by the army, and they are very angry. Although this is not a Chinese naval battle, if they win and go back, they will have the capital to brag. Don't fight yet, my hands are numb on the launch button. The anti-ship missiles are thirsty, the instructor on the number 2 ship said anxiously. I have opened 2 triple missile launch boxes. Same, the target has been locked, I just don't like the opposite flagship. Tohachi didn't let them wait for long, all anti-ship missiles are ready, listen to my orders at 12 noon, aim at the opposite destroyer first. The destroyer is faster than other warships, Tohachi is ready to shoot down the opposite destroyer first. The soldiers on all the warships of Liaoning fleet began to hold their breath, waiting for the arrival of 12 noon, and only the tick-tick sound of the second hand could be heard in the silence. At the same time, Mustafa and Ali secretly glanced at each other and quietly left the control room. Fortunately, everyone was nervously watching the Liaoning fleet on the opposite side, and no one was paying attention to them. The two walked out of the control room and tried to stay away from the armory as soon as possible. Ali even took off the folded rubber boat on the inconspicuous wall. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Bulletin Liang. Chapter 514. Tick, tick, pop, the hour and minute hands were pointing at 12 o'clock. Anka, Il, Murat, exploded one after another. From the sky, almost all the warships of the Black Sea Fleet were on fire. The sudden explosion made no one expect that some naval soldiers on the warships had already jumped into the sea like dumplings. The captain of the flagship Anka was obviously panicked. The shock caused by the explosion just now made him hit the wall directly, and blood flowed from his head for a while. What's going on? Captain, go, there was an explosion in the armory, and the flames have spread. The power room has been completely damaged. The adjutant quickly dragged the captain out of the control room. Boom, the continuous explosions and the smoke produced by the burning instantly covered the cabin. The soldiers on the deck were fine, they could jump directly into the sea to escape. The soldiers in the cabin were directly fainted by the toxic smoke and died inside. This scene appeared on almost every warship. Only a few warships were lucky enough not to cause ammunition explosions and barely put out the fire on the warships. The change in the Black Sea Fleet made Tohachi stunned for a moment, but he immediately realized that this should be Commander Li Qing's plan. Listen to my orders, relock the target and fire, Tohachi said in surprise. The Chinese soldiers on the missile frigate finally reacted. Quick, re-aim at the target, the destroyer that is not on fire at the 3 o'clock direction. The instructor of the number 1 ship was so excited that he quickly gave orders. Instructor, the radar is locked. Instructor number 1 rubbed his hands and pressed the launch button directly. This was his first actual combat strike since he joined the army. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The anti-ship missile instantly took off, drew a graceful arc in the air, and rushed straight to the destroyer on the opposite side. Then the destroyer on the opposite side was penetrated by the anti-ship missile for a while, making a huge explosion, flames splashing, and half of the hull was wrapped in thick smoke. The anti-ship missiles of ships 2 and 3 were launched almost simultaneously, flying towards several intact warships on the opposite side. The opposite side was already in a panic, and the armory room on the warship suddenly exploded, directly disrupting their plans. With the serious damage to the power system of the warship, let alone counterattack, there is no escape now. There are only 2 or 3 destroyers that can still move, hoping to distance themselves from the Linnea fleet and intend to counterattack in a roundabout way. These destroyers took advantage of their speed and went around to the side. The anti-ship missiles on the destroyers also soared into the sky, and came towards the bulky cruisers of the Linnea fleet at a speed visible to the naked eye. This scared Zofeng, Chi Gang, and others who were watching the satellite images. With the speed of the cruiser, they could not avoid the anti-ship missiles at all. However, Tohachi was not worried at all. 174 interceptor missile ready, launch. Swoosh, swoosh. The interceptor missile was launched and accurately intercepted the anti-ship missiles on the opposite side. Seeing this scene from the satellite, William smacked his lips and remembered the Aegis defense system that Li Qing bought from him. The Turks have no chance at all. If there hadn't been a sudden explosion at the beginning, the Turks might have been able to take down the Linnea fleet with their advantage in the number of weapons. Now the situation has reversed, and the Linnea fleet is almost invincible with the Aegis defense system. Even if there are scattered missiles, they will be intercepted. The Linnea fleet did not give the Black Sea fleet any chance, and directly opened fire. A total of 24 RGM-84G missiles soared into the sky as if they were free, and directly hit the warships of the Black Sea fleet that launched missiles. A cruiser can carry up to 8 RGM-84G missiles, otherwise Tohachi and his men could have brought a few more. Of course, this does not explain the full combat power of the cruiser. As a naval weapon before the appearance of aircraft carriers, it also has 128 launch units, equipped with 4 Tomahawk cruise missiles, 12 Sea Sparrow missiles, 16 RIM 174 interceptor missiles. So the cruisers of the Linnea fleet are already armed to the teeth, with sufficient firepower for sea, air, and ground. Of course, the disadvantages are also obvious, that is, bulky and slow. 24 RGM-84G missiles were launched, and the Black Sea fleet on the opposite side was completely quiet. Even the few ships that were hit had signs of sinking. Only naval soldiers were fluttering like ants on the entire sea. The entire Black Sea fleet has completely lost its combat capability. At this time, less than 10 minutes have passed since the start of the war. The meeting room of the Turkic military department was full of senior officials, and they were all waiting for the news of the naval battle. What? You said that the Black Sea fleet suffered serious losses. The president was shocked and received the news of the Black Sea fleet's damage at the first time. This news made the senior officials in the meeting room explode, and they looked at the admiral in disbelief. The attack plan was carried out by the Navy, and the admiral, as the person in charge, must give an explanation. How is this possible? The admiral's face was pale. He could never have imagined that his fleet would be so severely damaged in such a short time. Was the enemy a heavenly soldier? General, please issue an order quickly. The Linnea fleet's attack is still continuing, the subordinate said hurriedly. Everyone's eyes were fixed on the admiral, especially the president's vicious eyes that wished to tear him apart alive. The admiral could only calm down and remain silent for a moment, immediately let the submarine fleet behind launch an attack. It turned out that he had arranged for the submarine fleet to detour to the rear of the Linnea fleet, hoping to completely annihilate the Linnea fleet after the defeat. Unexpectedly, the Black Sea fleet was defeated. Fortunately, he deployed a submarine fleet. As long as he could completely destroy the Linnea fleet, he could still keep his position as the admiral of the Navy with his connections. Otherwise, he might really have to find a rope to hang himself. Beep beep. A rapid alarm sounded on the radar of the Linnea fleet cruiser. The radar on the cruiser was also obtained by Li Qing personally from the military of the United States. It is the INSPY-1B multifunction radar and fire control system. This is one of the most advanced multifunction radars sold by the United States. It can detect ships up to 170 nautical miles from the sea surface. As for underwater, it can detect up to 30 nautical miles. General Tohachi, there is a submarine 30 nautical miles behind us. The radar sergeant quickly reported the situation to Tohachi. Tohachi immediately ordered the three cruisers to lock the target and launch Mk-54 anti-submarine torpedoes. The 053 series frigate, loaded with U-7 anti-submarine torpedoes, was also launched immediately. The Turkic submarine fleet did not notice that they were discovered until dense red dots appeared on their radar. Torpedo, torpedo. The radar soldiers in the submarine screamed, and they moved quickly, and the interceptor missiles were launched instantly. Unfortunately, there were too many torpedoes in the Linnea fleet. There were 50 torpedoes of various types on the three cruisers, plus the U-7 on the frigate. The interceptor missiles of the submarine fleet were simply a drop in the bucket. Amid the desperate shouts of the submarine soldiers, various torpedoes directly hit several submarines, directly tearing the submarines apart, and seawater instantly poured into the submarines due to the pressure difference. Several submarines instantly disappeared on the radar of the Linnea cruiser. After receiving the news that the submarine fleet was completely destroyed, the admiral collapsed in his seat. No one could save him this time. Someone must be held responsible for the failure of this naval battle. The president looked at the admiral who had lost his energy and rubbed his stinging temples. What should we do now? Is there still a possibility of annihilating the Linnea fleet? Everyone lowered their heads silently, without saying a word. No one could take over this mess now. Army. The army general shook his head. The coastal defense artillery can't reach that far. Air Force. Yes, send fighter bombers, the admiral of the Navy shouted as if he had grabbed a life-saving straw. Although the Navy also has fighters, most of the aircraft are in the hands of the Air Force. The Air Force general glared at the Navy admiral. No one dared to step forward at this time. If they won, it would be fine. If they lost, they would definitely bear the same responsibility as the Navy. Without waiting for the Air Force general to speak, the president said directly, "Send fighters. This time, we must keep the Linnea fleet in the Mediterranean, otherwise we Turks will become a joke in the world." Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 515. China, General Staff, Conference Room. The atmosphere in the conference room was very quiet, as if time had been frozen. Everyone opened their eyes and mouths wide, looking incredulous. Is it over? Zhou Feng looked at his watch, less than 10 minutes. Dog, the Turks had no power to fight back the whole time. What happened to the sudden explosion of the Turkish warship before the battle? What weapons are equipped with the Linnea fleet? All kinds of questions filled the entire conference room. There are too many things to study in this short naval battle. In addition to the sudden explosion before the battle, the entire Linnea fleet was completely overwhelming in terms of firepower, accuracy, and defense system. The explosion before the battle is really important. The explosion before the naval battle played a vital role. If the Turkish Black Sea Fleet had not lost its position because of the explosion, the Linnea fleet would not have won so easily. It should be a spy. It's probably true. But there are spies on almost all ships, which is a bit unlikely. In fact, everyone had guesses in their hearts, but they didn't say it out loud. What concerns me is not this, but the strong combat capability demonstrated by the Linnea fleet. The boss in the sea position frowned and said, "The Linnea fleet is excellent in missile launch, interception, and anti-submarine, especially the Aegis defense system. Everyone has seen the scene of intercepting missiles. The sporadic anti-ship missiles are not a threat to the Linnea fleet at all, coupled with various advanced all-American weapons and equipment, which makes people in the entire conference room aware of something. Alas, in terms of weapon performance, we are still not as good as the United States," the boss sighed. Although he knew there was a gap, it was obvious that through this naval battle, he found that the gap was greater than he imagined. This naval battle is another proof of the suppression power of the United States' advanced equipment. The first was the Gulf War. It will also become a classic case of winning with fewer people. All the people in the conference room fell silent, secretly determined to attach importance to weapons research and development and quickly catch up with the United States. The Ministry of Defense of the United States on the other side of the earth was not idle either. Deputy Minister William and some military senior officials were also carefully analyzing the results of the naval battle. Alas, I didn't expect the Linnea fleet to win so easily, William sighed. Before the war, he expected that Li Qing would definitely have a backup plan. As he expected, the sudden explosion of most warships can be said to be one of the main factors in this naval battle. Tisk tisk, at the same time, this also shows the powerful performance of our American weapons. William came back to his senses. In fact, he also hoped that the Linnea fleet could win this naval battle. After all, the 3 cruisers were all American equipment purchased by Li Qing from him, whether it was the radar system, fire control system, Aegis system, and other anti-ship missiles, torpedoes. This time, we won with fewer people, and our American equipment was also one of the main factors. Other officers also saw this. William looked at the officer with appreciation. Yes, this is a good business opportunity. I plan to widely publicize this naval battle and analyze it from every detail. Well, focus on the American weapons. This matter is handed over to you. The officer was delighted, knowing that he had caught the attention of the Deputy Minister of Defense. Guarantee to complete the mission. William smiled from ear to ear. He didn't expect that this naval battle would bring unexpected gains to the United States. Now those wealthy countries in the Middle East will definitely come to the United States to purchase goods. Compared with the impact of this naval battle, the empty shell of the Varian really doesn't matter. He estimated that China couldn't make an empty shell even if it studied for 30 years. The reactions of European countries were different. Some were unbelievable, some were gloating, and some were worried about the Linnea fleet coming. But all of them realized one thing, that is, the strength of the Linnea fleet was much stronger than imagined. The Turkic Air Force general was extremely reluctant to participate in this matter. To be honest, a naval battle is a naval battle. The entire Navy and Air Force went up at the same time. Even if they won, it would not be glorious. But there was no way. The president's order was above everything else. He stood up and saluted, and hurried down to arrange the air strike. The Linnea fleet inherited Li Qing's thoughts and began to beat the fallen dog with the remaining courage. Basically, all the warships of the Black Sea Fleet have been scrapped, and the Turkish Navy has suffered countless casualties. At this time, the Turkish Navy, which was lingering on the sea, no longer had the high spirits of more than 10 minutes ago, and wailed one by one to board the lifeboat. Mustafa and Ali looked at each other on the crowded rubber boat, and both nodded slightly at the same time. Watching their ship slowly sinking into the sea, the two knew that as long as they didn't say anything, no one could find out anything, and the final evidence had sunk to the bottom of the sea. Li Qing was also the first to receive the news that the Linnea fleet had won a great victory in the naval battle, and was very happy. But at the same time, he also received the news that the Turks were preparing to send out the Air Force, and immediately ordered the Linnea fleet to retreat. Although there were anti-aircraft missiles on the cruiser, it was still inadequate in the face of a large number of air forces. If it was a sea-to-air battle, Li Qing himself had no confidence that he could win again. After receiving Li Qing's order, the Linnea fleet immediately ordered to withdraw along the original route, at least to the Red Sea, so that it would be safer. Li Qing closed his eyes and thought for a moment. He didn't have any trump cards to deal with the Air Force, but he couldn't just watch the Linnea fleet being beaten. Dongzhou, notify the autonomous province to start the Dongfeng Express, aiming at the Air Force base in Turkic Anka City. Li Qing opened his eyes, and a trace of determination flashed in his eyes. Zhang Dongzhou's heart tightened when he heard it. Big brother, are you really going to fight? This is a nuclear bomb. In Zhang Dongzhou's view, since the United States dropped 2 nuclear bombs in the small days, no one has dared to really use nuclear weapons. If the New World launches nuclear weapons, the impact will be too great. Li Qing glanced at Zhang Dongxiu, you can see it, but I can't? Let them replace the warhead with a large-yield missile head. Dongfeng Express has been secretly getting more from his hometown over the years, and it's just the right opportunity to try the power of Dongfeng Express. Zhang Dongxiu smiled, nodded quickly, and went down to make arrangements. Li Qing wanted to let the Turks know that he was capable of attacking the Turkic homeland. As long as the Turkic Air Force dared to attack the Liania fleet, the consequences would be borne by them. The Turks were completely unaware of his arrangements. The Air Force General had already issued an order and the Air Force combat units had begun to assemble. The Turks' actions could not be concealed. William received the news as soon as possible in the United States, where spies were everywhere. He immediately ordered the secretary behind him, notify Li Qing of the news immediately. The secretary was stunned for a moment. He did not expect his boss's position to change so quickly. Some time ago, he asked the Turks to stop the Varian from crossing the strait, and this time he stood on Li Qing's side. But he did not dare to hesitate and immediately took out his phone and called Li Qing. William smiled. In his mind, he did not say who he stood for. He just looked at which side could make the United States benefit more. The current situation is that the Liania fleet represents the advanced combat readiness of the United States. It must not lose. Who would buy American equipment if it loses? He wants to use the Liania fleet as a benchmark for publicity. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 516. Li Qing received a call from William's secretary and smiled mysteriously, please tell Mr. William that the moment the Turkish Air Force takes off is when my Dongfeng Express is aiming at it. This time it's not a joke. The secretary was stunned for a moment, and his face changed drastically. He knew that Li Qing had a nuclear warhead in his hand. If the nuclear warhead is really activated, it will not only have a great impact on the Turks, but also on the next strategic deployment of the United States, and even affect the international situation in the world. It may even start a new round of military competition. Some countries will secretly develop nuclear weapons for self-protection, which is not in line with the interests of the United States. The secretary immediately reported Li Qing's words to William, and William's face also changed drastically. He didn't expect Li Qing to be so bold, but it was just because of an empty shell of the Varian. Why is it so? Hurry up and contact the Turkish military to warn them not to act rashly, otherwise they will bear the consequences. William did not dare to delay and immediately ordered. He also hurriedly got up and wanted to report the matter to his superiors, after all, it involved nuclear weapons. China also detected the movements of the Turkic Air Force and informed Li Qing, who told his family the same thing. Qi Gang was scared. This, brother, not that, not that. This is a nuclear bomb. Li Qing raised his eyebrows, I was talking about Dongfeng Express from beginning to end, not nuclear warheads. Qi Gang came back to his senses, not a nuclear warhead. Yes, not a nuclear warhead. Okay, it's okay if it's not a nuclear warhead. Oh, no, Dongfeng 5 is not a nuclear warhead, but the missile head is. Li Qing coughed lightly, not big, a small warhead with a yield of several thousand tons. Qi Gang was very upset. A few thousand tons of yield is still small. Hiroshima and Nagasaki are only equivalent to 15,000 tons and 20,000 tons of TNT. This yield is really not small. Brother, try not to hurt innocent people. Qi Gang said hesitantly. If the missile really exploded in the residential area, there would be many casualties. This is not because he is a saint, but he just doesn't want to hurt so many innocent civilians. Haha, don't worry, brother Chi. I just locked the Air Force base, Li Qing laughed. He had considered this matter a long time ago. He is not afraid of hurting innocent people, but he doesn't want to be accused by the international community and tarnish his reputation, although his reputation is not good now. That's good, Qi Gang smiled foolishly. The two of them hung up the phone after talking for a while. Brother, the Turkic Air Force has taken off and is expected to catch up with the Linnea fleet in half an hour, Zhang Dongzia whispered in Li Qing's ear. Li Qing nodded and said coldly, let the autonomous province launch the Dongfeng Express. He has made up his mind. This time, he will show off his muscles no matter what. Everyone knows that he will be more unscrupulous compared to the big countries. Zhang Dongzia nodded and hurried down to contact. The fighter group whizzed past, and the Turks on the ground opened their hands and cheered continuously. Obviously, they didn't know about the Navy's defeat. Look, our F-6 fighters. The Air Force has actually been dispatched. Is there an accident with the Navy? Bullshit, with such a huge disparity in power, how can we lose? Every time I see the Air Force, I am very proud. Our Turks are so powerful. Speaking of the Turkish Air Force, they are indeed very proud. The Turkish Air Force is the third largest air force in NATO after the United States and Japan. There are more than 240 fighters in regular service, most of which are American-made F-series, which is why Li Qing is afraid of it. The current anti-aircraft missiles of the Linnea fleet are not enough to resist the attack of the Turkish Air Force. At this time, the meeting room of the Turkish military headquarters was waiting for news from the Air Force. Mr. President, the Air Force combat formation has taken off. This time, the Air Force's trump cards, the Flying Squirrel formation and the Lightning Cat formation are carrying out the mission. It will take about 30 minutes to reach the location of the Linnea fleet. The Air Force general got the news of the plane taking off and stood up to report. The president nodded. This time the Air Force sent out the trump card, and he didn't believe that he couldn't completely destroy the Linnea fleet. The cell phone vibrated, and a lieutenant general of the Ministry of National Defense in charge of external relations looked at the phone and quickly picked it up. 5 minutes later, he walked to the president with a pale face and whispered a few words. The Turkic president, who had originally looked bad, turned pale and looked unbelievable. Are you sure? Mr. President, the Ministry of National Defense of the United States called personally. Dongfeng Express is on the way, the lieutenant general nodded. He couldn't believe it when he heard the news, but it was indeed news from the United States. It's over, nuclear bomb, the president shouted desperately. Others also heard some clues in the president's words, and the army general didn't care about crossing the line and asked directly, what's going on? What nuclear bomb? The lieutenant general glanced at the president, who was at a loss, and had to repeat the news he got from the United States. Boom! The whole conference room was churning like a loach falling into a frying pan. What? Nuclear bomb? I told you not to provoke this lunatic, Li Qing. Even the United States dared not intervene, and only you fools rushed forward. Damn, $1 billion. This is the price you pay for blackmailing $1 billion. Once the nuclear bomb falls, it will cause more than $100 billion in losses. Damn it, you dragged the entire Turkic into the abyss. Ankh will become the next Hiroshima and Nagasaki. No, we have to evacuate the people quickly. At this time, the president's opponents no longer had any scruples and jumped up to accuse the group of people who blackmailed the New World. Almost everyone looked at the president with a bad look. Once the nuclear bomb fell, they would be buried with him. They wanted to kill the president in their hearts. The president also reacted and said with a pale face, how long will it take for Dongfeng Express to arrive? According to calculations, it should be about 16 minutes, the staff answered quickly. Is there any possibility of interception? The president looked at the army general he used to hate. The army general scowled and shook his head. Dongfeng is a ballistic missile with a maximum speed of 15-20 machine. The possibility of interception is very small. We can't afford the risk. The president slumped down on the chair and then struggled to get up. There is still a chance, there is still a chance. As long as we reset the coordinates and let the missile fall into the sea, we still have a chance. Quick, quick, hurry up and contact New World Li Cheng. No matter what method is used, we must prevent the nuclear bomb from falling on the Turks. If the nuclear bomb really falls on the Turks, he will be nailed to the pillar of shame in history, and will be infamous forever. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 517. While the Turkish Air Force was still chasing the Liania fleet, the Dongfeng missiles were heading towards the Turkish city of Anka at a speed exceeding 3 times the speed of sound. Everyone felt a chill at Li Qing's decision. They thought it was just a scare, but they didn't expect him to be serious. However, the most worried ones were the Turks themselves and the United States. After all, the nuclear bomb would have the greatest impact on these two countries. Li Qing also received a call from the Turks. "Hello, Mr. Li Qing, everything can be discussed. Please stop the Dongfeng Express first." The Turkish diplomats were so anxious that they didn't know what to say. They actually wanted to stop the Dongfeng Express. "I'm afraid only God can do it." "Stop. I can't do that. I just launch it," Li Qing sneered. Now the Turks are anxious. Some people feel pain only when a stone hits their forehead. "No, just let it deviate and fall into the sea." The diplomats began to sweat anxiously. Now time is not allowed to be wasted. Every second of delay reduces the possibility of survival for these people. Li Qing shook his head. The Turkic president still didn't want to show up, which made him a little angry. "Let the Turkic president talk to me." In fact, the Turkic president has been beside him, and the diplomat's phone is also on speakerphone. "Ahem, I'm here, Mr. Li Qing. If there is anything, we can talk. There is no need to make such a big deal. Isn't it just the very egg? I will send someone to let it go immediately," the Turkic president said politely. The tone of his speech was completely different from when he blackmailed New World for $1 billion. "I don't have any requirements. It is impossible for Dongfeng Express to stop on the way now. The coordinates have been set long ago. I am afraid that the technical staff on my side are limited in ability and cannot modify it. The main thing is that this Dongfeng Express is worth $2 billion. Alas, I have suffered a great loss." Li Qing sighed and said in an embarrassed tone. As soon as these words came out, the senior officials of the Turkic military hiding in the underground air raid shelter suddenly became quiet. Such shameless words almost made people suffocate. A Dongfeng Express for $2 billion. Why don't you go and rob it? All of them have participated in the China Arms exhibition. The most advanced Dongfeng Express at the exhibition only cost tens of millions of dollars, and the cost is estimated to be around 40 million Chinese yuan. Now Li Qing actually asked for $2 billion, which is clearly blackmail. Okay. The president gritted his teeth. Now he has no right to negotiate the price. With a nuclear bomb hanging over his head, no one would consider it. Li Qing did not expect the other party to agree so readily. And the deck wear and tear fees, soldiers' food expenses, fuel consumption fees, etc. of my Liania fleet are almost a total of $500 million. The Turks knew that Li Qing was shameless, but they didn't know that he was so shameless. Listen to what he said. Deck wear and tear fees. If you don't come, won't it wear and tear? Soldier food expenses. If you don't come, won't the soldiers eat? The president's gums were bleeding. Okay. But you have to hurry up, there is no time. Li Qing wasted a lot of time and wasted a lot of time. Now there is less and less time left. By the way, your Air Force is still chasing my Linnea fleet, right? Li Qing said playfully. The president pursed his lips and ordered directly, let the two formations come back. Are you satisfied now? Mr. Li Qing, please hurry up. The Turkic air defense system has been warned now, and we can't wait any longer. If a nuclear bomb falls in the center of Enka, everything will be over. Although these people are in the air raid shelter, they dare not guarantee their safety. Li Qing smiled and deliberately ordered loudly, change the coordinates. Looking at the expression of his boss, Zhang Dongzhou next to him understood, Commander, time is too short and it's too late. All the Turkic high-level officials heard this sentence through the phone, and they couldn't help but stand up. Although they entered the air raid shelter, there were family members outside, and no one wanted any problems. Li Qing pretended to be anxious, quick, change the coordinates, as long as it's not in the center of Enka. Commander, no. The command can't be input now. Before Zhang Dongzhou spoke, the crow jumped out and roared. The voice broke at the end, and the Turkic people were almost scared. It sounded like there was no hope. It has to work even if it doesn't work. It's $2.50 billion, Li Qing glared at Crow, disliking his exaggerated performance. The coordinates have been changed, Zhang Dongzhou said loudly. The Turkic high-level officials who heard the voice breathed a sigh of relief. It was finally changed. But the next sentence made them worry again. Commander, although the coordinates have been changed, they are still around Enka City. It's too late to change them again, Zhang Dongzhou shouted loudly, and then looked at the watch, too late, it's about to hit. All the Turkic high-level officials didn't care about anything now, and they lay on the ground to save their lives. Beep beep. A busy tone appeared on the phone. After waiting for about a minute, there was a slight vibration on the top of the air raid shelter, and the Turkic president raised his head blankly. It stands to reason that if it was a nuclear bomb, it would not be so quiet. Come here, contact the higher UPS to find out what's going on, the Turkic president stood up and ordered. The others also stood up awkwardly and dusted themselves off. A few minutes later, the staff hurried down from above. Mr. President, Dongfeng Express landed at the Air Force Base on the outskirts of Enka. Now the entire Air Force Base has been completely damaged by missiles and cannot be used. The Turkic president was stunned. Missile, not a nuclear bomb. After getting the confirmation from the staff, he breathed a sigh of relief. It's not a nuclear bomb, it didn't fall in the city center. The senior executives were very relieved. But now the president came to his senses and felt a sense of humiliation in his heart. Li Qing dared to play tricks on him. Seeing the president's face, the senior executives looked at each other and remained silent. Ding-ling-ling, the phone rang suddenly, scaring everyone. President, it's Li Qing calling. Answer it, turn on the speaker, the president snorted coldly. Hello, President, is there? Alas, it's a close call this time. If it's a little later, it will explode in the center of Enka. Li Qing's slightly regretful voice came from the phone. The Turkic high-ranking officials rolled their eyes at the same time. If the coordinates had not been set at the Air Force Base on purpose, they would have stood on their heads and eaten shit. Li Qing, you actually lied to me. The president could no longer hold back his anger when he heard Li Qing's teasing tone. Now, Mr. President, you are not going to regret it, are you? Li Qing sneered. You don't think I dare not use nuclear bombs, do you? Do you want to gamble again? Do you think I will install a nuclear warhead next time? The Turkic president had a gloomy face and said nothing. If I don't see $2.5 billion in the account of my autonomous province within a day, we will see, Li Qing threatened. Just when everyone thought that Li Qing had hung up the phone, they heard Li Qing's voice again. By the way, face is something, Since you can't give it to me, I will take it myself. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 518. The entire air raid shelter was extremely quiet, with only the busy tone of the phone and the president's rough breathing. Li Qing's words made the Turks lose face and also lost their substance. The conflict between the two sides was nothing more than whether the Variag could cross the strait. The Turks stood on the side of the United States and did not give the New World any face. Li Qing now directly relied on his own power to make the Turks lose troops and generals. Mr. President, should we ask for help from the United States? In fact, we are doing this for the United States. The president's advisor asked carefully. The Turkic president sat in a chair with his eyes closed. Contact the United States Hexagon. 10 minutes ago, the United States Hexagon, the Ministry of Defense. William opened his eyes wide and looked very shocked. The dot representing Dongfeng Express quickly flew towards the direction of the Turks. Is Li Qing crazy? How dare he? Everyone in the conference room couldn't help but look at the screen intently. They couldn't believe that Li Qing dared to be so reckless. You know, once the nuclear bomb falls, it will not only affect the Turks. Just when everyone was surprised at Li Qing's madness, an expert who specialized in Chinese weapons frowned. General William, Dongfeng Express is much faster than we thought. Although there is still some gap compared with Trident. The expert touched his chin and frowned while staring at the screen. After hearing this, William also frowned slightly. It seems that the development speed of Chinese weapons in recent years is not slow. How about other aspects? The professional shook his head. Too little data, I can't see anything for the time being. Now we only know about the speed. If we can see the scene afterwards, we should be able to study a lot of things. It seems that this conflict not only let the world see the power of our weapons and equipment, but also let China's Dongfeng Express show up. Tisk tisk. William shook his head. After a long time, the most injured were the Turks who were sent warmth by Dongfeng Express. Looking at the small dot representing Dongfeng Express disappearing over Anka City, everyone took a breath. They knew that Dongfeng Express had exploded. Quick! Contact the Turks to see what's going on. William was eager to know the current information about the Turks. Unfortunately, the American embassy had already evacuated the moment it knew that the Dongfeng Express had taken off. Now no one knows the situation in Anka City. A group of people waited anxiously for more than 10 minutes. Secretary William ran behind him and whispered in his ear, "General William, the Turks just sent a message that the Dongfeng Express landed at the Air Force airport. Fortunately, it was not a nuclear bomb." The secretary quickly reported the information about the Turks to William, and William's expression relaxed. As long as it was not a nuclear bomb, it would be fine. Ahem, Dongfeng Express directly blew up the Air Force base outside the Turks. William cleared his throat. Everyone else nodded, only the expert asked solemnly, "General, can you tell me the details?" William nodded and glanced at the secretary. The secretary repeated the news he had received. "Are you saying that the Dongfeng Express was the bombing site that Li Qing temporarily changed?" the expert asked with his head tilted. That's what the Turks said," the secretary replied. William looked at the expert with a serious expression. "Is there anything wrong? If Li Qing originally decided on the Air Force base, it means that Dongfeng Express has a very high accuracy. Such a long distance, it can achieve such accuracy, which is a great threat to us." The expert thought carefully and said seriously, "What if the coordinates were really changed by Li Qing temporarily?" The people next to him looked at the expert curiously. "That can only mean one thing, that is, Dongfeng Express's missile technology has surpassed the United States. At such a fast speed and in such a short time, it is difficult for our Trident to complete it." The expert sneered and shook his head. He personally did not believe that China's technology could reach this level. William glanced at him. What are the possibilities? Very low. It is very likely that Li Qing did not intend to blow up Anka City from the beginning, and the original coordinates were the Air Force airport. William nodded when he heard this. The expert's statement was consistent with his understanding of Li Qing. General William, the Turks sent a message to ask for help from the United States. I hope the United States can come forward. William raised his hand to interrupt the secretary's report. We only asked them to intercept the Varian, and did not ask them to blackmail Li Qing for $1 billion. Humph, the Turks are completely to blame for this situation. William is a master of the politicians of the United States. It is normal for the United States to have two faces before and after the event. Just because the Liania fleet has become a shining business card of American equipment, the United States will not come forward for the Turks. The secretary did not speak. He already knew what Minister William meant. The Turks will bear this matter alone, and the United States will not come forward. The Turkish high-level officials who received the news at the first time fell into a deathly silence. Asshole, we have always been helping the United States, but in the end we have to bear all this. The most hateful thing is that they still blame us. Did we agree to the $1 billion blackmail? I am doubting whether the decision to leave Asia and join Europe is correct. There are also obvious mistakes in the Navy's decision-making. Now it seems that they completely underestimated the enemy. The entire Navy has problems. At the moment when they learned that Turk was abandoned by the United States, the president's opponents in the upper echelons jumped out to accuse the president of a series of pro-American policies. The president of Turk was gloomy and said nothing. What the United States said was right in one thing, that is, they did not instruct them to blackmail New World for $1 billion. Their side relied on the support of the United States to directly blackmail $1 billion, which angered Li Qing. Now that someone has torn off his face and stepped on it, there is nothing he can do. Who knows whether Li Qing's next Dongfeng Express will carry a nuclear warhead? No one dares to bet on this matter. The president of Turk covered his left chest with both hands in sorrow and anger, with a painful expression on his face. The staff who often appeared in front of the president shouted, "Medicine, medicine, the president has a heart attack." But because they left in a hurry, the medicine was left in the office and was not taken out at all. A group of people were anxious, some called doctors, and some went to get medicine, but there was no special medicine for heart disease, and the disease progressed very quickly. Watching the president's face slowly turn pale, a group of senior officials were helpless. The president was dead. The army general glanced. What should we do now? Everyone looked at the army general, puzzled. The most important thing now is to solve the mess left by the president. Before his death, the president had ordered to suppress public opinion and transfer $2.5 billion to New World in other forms, right? When the senior officials heard this, their eyes lit up at the same time, looking at the president's body on the ground. This is the ready-made scapegoat. Everything was instructed by the president. Yeah. Yes. That's right. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 519. In the conference room of the General Staff of China, all the military bosses at home gathered together to study the naval battle of the Liaoning fleet and the performance of Dongfeng Express. Tisk tisk, although Li Qing won this naval battle with a left-handed approach, I have to say that this kid is really powerful. There was something that the big boss didn't say in his mind. In his opinion, even if China used agents and spies, it would be difficult to achieve this level. After all, there are too many people involved. If any one of them has national justice in their heart, this matter will not be successful. Qi Gang snorted angrily, what's wrong and right? Lao Li hasn't read Sun Tzu's Art of War? Soldiers are crafty. As long as they can win the battle. Now Qi Gang can no longer see others having objections to Li Cheng. Hey, you old Qi, I just said casually, forget it, let's talk about our Dongfeng Express. The big boss smiled and waved his hand, too lazy to argue with Qi Gang. Dongfeng Express? Our Dongfeng 5's performance this time is remarkable, with an accuracy error of only 1 kilometer. Yes, although there is still a gap between it and the beautiful country's trident, I am personally very satisfied. Tisk tisk, I guess Dongfeng Express's orders are going to explode. A group of people were happily discussing Dongfeng Express. Obviously, this was the first time Dongfeng Express was used in actual combat, making China's important weapon appear in front of the world. There is no need to think about future orders. Middle Eastern countries will definitely come to purchase goods. I guess the Valyang is coming back. What should we do to compensate Li Qing this time? A big boss asked, scratching his head. As soon as the statement came out, everyone fell into deep thought. To be honest, Li Qing's contribution this time was really great, and he even did not hesitate to use force against the Turks for the sake of the Varian, although he also had the support of his hometown. Coupled with the equipment of the Varian, the White Swan, Valentine, these items are all a heavy achievement. It's okay to say that he is really a military man, and it is not an exaggeration to give him a general. The key is that Li Qing's current status is very special. If he is awarded a general, it will not be good for him. After all, the New World is now a multinational organization, and Li Qing is obviously too close to his hometown, which is not a good thing for both parties. A group of people discussed it in the conference room but came to no conclusion, so they simply threw the problem to the Minister of Defense, who was on an overseas diplomatic visit. Under the dim light in the air raid shelter, the army general's face showed a hint of pleasure in having a great revenge. In recent years, he has been suppressed by the president. In the eyes of the president, the Navy is his direct descendant, and the Army's military expenditure is less than half of that of the Navy. Even if the president does not die this time, he will find a way to remove the president from power. Now that the president has died just in time, he has completely become the scapegoat. Ahem, everyone, we still need to clean up the mess left by the president. The army general became serious and coughed, attracting everyone's attention. The issue of $2.5 billion in compensation. The army general frowned and blurted out. This matter can be big or small. If the Turkic people really know about the compensation for losing their rights and humiliating the country, I'm afraid even the spittle of saliva can drown people like myself. You mean, repudiated the bill, someone who was in trouble used the honorific title directly. The current situation in the Turks is not good. Since the army general wants to take the lead, why not do it? The army general glared at the man. What are you thinking? If you dare to default on your account, Li Qing will try again. What I mean is that this compensation cannot be paid in cash alone. If other opposition parties know about it, it will become a reason to criticize us. What do you mean? The army general thought for a moment. Didn't a small oil field just be discovered in the southeastern Czech province? The value of the newly discovered small oil field is not very high. According to relevant Turkic experts, the value of the oil reserves is estimated to be around $10 billion. But anyone who knows the oil field knows that $10 billion is an estimate, and the specific amount may depend on the annual oil production. If you are unlucky, you will earn hundreds of millions of dollars every year. Well, you want to. Before he finished speaking, the army general nodded. What I mean is that the $500 million can be transferred directly to the Chinese autonomous province of Java, and the other $2 billion can be repaid directly with the 2-year ownership of the oil fields. This method is not easy to attract others' attention, and it also digs a hole for Li Qing. Anyway, the ownership of the oil field is given to you for 2 years. If you can extract $10 billion in 2 years, it is your ability. If you can only extract 100 to 200 million per year, sorry, it means you are not capable enough. When the others heard the army general's words, their eyes lit up. If Li Qing really agreed to this method, it would be the most beneficial to the Turks. This is a Turk after all, and as long as they use some tricks, Li Qing won't be able to hire anyone to mine it even if he has an oil field. The senior management were all smart people, and they knew what the army general meant with just a moment's thought. They all looked at each other and smiled, indicating that this method was feasible. The army general saw that most people agreed with this method, so he directly asked people to draw up relevant documents and have everyone sign their names. If someone turns up the old score later, everyone will be responsible. One day after the air raid on the Turkic air base, the Varian was also released. Tian Yangsheng and others stood on the tugboat, looking at the straight management personnel who were so arrogant a few days ago from a distance of dozens of meters. Now they are like bereaved dogs, not even daring to look at Tian Yangsheng and others. Damn, where is the arrogance from the past few days? A local dog is a local dog, not worthy of being on the stage. Tian Yanji spat with disdain. The tugboat towed the Variang safely across the strait. This time, the Turks did not dare to do anything. Their biggest wish now was to send the Variang away quickly. After traveling for dozens of nautical miles, Tian Yangsheng and others saw the wreckage of several burnt-out warships of the Black Sea Fleet. From a distance, there were still some soldiers busy on the warships, dismantling some usable equipment. Seeing the Variang, which was like a steel behemoth, they felt mixed emotions. Just because of a pile of scrap metal, the entire Turkish navy was now embarrassed. I heard that the Air Force also suffered heavy losses, and the subsequent airstrike formations all landed at other city airports. Tian Yangsheng and others could feel the resentful eyes of the other side from a distance, but they did not care about the other side's attitude. Under the towing of more than a dozen tugboats, the Variang quickly moved towards the Suez Canal. Not long after, they joined the Liania fleet waiting near the Suez Canal and returned home with the Liania fleet. Pyramid didn't dare to say a word when passing through the Suez Canal this time. Li Qing smiled after hearing the news. In his previous life, Pyramid didn't have this attitude. He refused to let the Variang go through the Suez Canal, forcing the Variang to take a long detour before returning home. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 520. Just when the Varian was sailing in the Red Sea, Li Qing received a letter from the Turkic side. $500 million plus 2 years of ownership of an oil field. Li Qing was a little stunned, then reacted. He knew that the Turkic side did not pay all the money, there must be a deep meaning. Which oil field? How much is the reserve? The Turkic side knew that Li Qing was going to ask, and had already made relevant preparations. Mr. Li Qing, a newly discovered oil field in the Turkic Shek province, the value of the reserves is equivalent to $20 billion, the army general on the opposite side said with a smile. Since the unexpected death of the Turkic president, he was temporarily appointed as the president under the recommendation of the top leaders, so the resolution of this matter also fell on his head. Li Qing chuckled. He didn't believe a word of what the other side said. It was impossible for him to be so kind, there must be some conspiracy waiting for him. Not to mention the reserves are worth $20 billion, even if the reserves are worth $10 billion, the 2-year production volume exceeds $2 billion. He first wiped out the Black Sea Fleet, and then destroyed an Air Force base, causing thousands of casualties. The Turks wanted to kill him 500 times, and now this good thing will happen to him, even dogs don't believe it. Li Qing's eyes turned, and a plan came to his mind. Mr. Acting President, we don't have oil mining business. For the 2-year ownership of this oil field, I ask to authorize a third party. The army general on the opposite side listened and thought carefully. This method is not impossible. Anyway, it doesn't matter who comes. He has a lot of ways to make these people hit the nose. This is also okay, but Mr. Li Qing's $2 billion, should we? No problem, the 2-year ownership of this oil field is equivalent to $2 billion, Li Qing said in a straightforward manner. Hearing Li Qing's words, the army general immediately smiled. His plan was successful. He had a way to make Li Qing not get a penny. Li Qing wanted to deny the debt afterwards, but it was written in black and white. If you, Li Qing, dare to launch Dongfeng Express again, you will also be without a reason. Okay, when is it convenient for you to sign the agreement? I have to give an explanation to the people for such a big thing, the army general asked with a smile. He was a little impatient. He would record the scene of the two parties signing the agreement and broadcast it on TV. Li Qing would be embarrassed to deny it later. Well, okay, I'll do it as soon as possible, Li Qing smiled. They both hung up the phone happily. However, after hanging up the phone, Li Qing thought for a moment and called William, the Deputy Minister of Defense of the United States. Beep. The phone was connected after a few rings. Ahem, Li Qing. I'm in a meeting now. If you have something to say, please tell me, William said in a low voice. They were indeed in a meeting, and this meeting was exactly related to the naval battle of the Linnea fleet. Oh. Well, Mr. William, I'll make it short. Li Qing couldn't help but curl his lips and smile. He, Minister William, do you want the oil field? William thought Li Qing was going to say something, but he didn't expect him to mention the oil field directly and even asked him if he wanted the oil field. He felt insulted. The whole world knew the song "I Steal Oil for America." He wanted to sing it to Li Qing, the beautiful Middle East, American soldiers ride Hummers. I am so proud to be an oil robber, wearing a helmet and traveling around the world. I steal oil for my motherland, your home has oil and your home is my home. Li Qing looked at the microphone in confusion. William did not speak for a long time. Just when he thought William hung up the phone, William's voice came from the other side. Don't ask, ask is to ask, tell me. What's going on? William had secretly walked out of the conference room. It's nothing serious, it's just that the Turks want to use the 2-year ownership of an oil field to offset the $2 billion IO, Li Qing said. Huh? When did the Turks owe you $2 billion? Just now. William was speechless. He knew that Li Qing must be blackmailing the Turks, but this was not what he cared about. He cared about the oil field. The Turks have always been an ally of the United States. Although they have always coveted the resources of the Turks, the United States dare not do too much, otherwise who would dare to get involved with the United States in the future? How much is the oil reserve worth? William asked directly. If the oil reserve is large, they don't mind going out in person. It is said to be worth $20 billion. I don't know anyway. If you want it, call me $2 billion and I will transfer it to you. Li Qing rubbed his ears. The long phone call made his ears uncomfortable. $20 billion, William was a little disgusted. For him, this oil field was too small. Do you want it? If not, I will ask John, Gaul, and China. Anyway, oil is the easiest thing to sell. Any country with more power than the Turks will definitely take it over. Yes, why not? William thought for a while and said. Well, we will exchange it for you with American equipment. William is also a man who does not suffer losses. He directly asked for arms. As a big arms dealer, Li Qing readily agreed. He doesn't like this small oil field, but he can take the opportunity of oil mining to explore the terrain of the Turks. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Okay, I'll send someone to Turk-Enka to sign the agreement the day after tomorrow, and you can send someone over as well. Li Qing had long anticipated that William would definitely not give up this opportunity. In order to prevent any accidents, he directly set the time for the day after tomorrow. In this way, Turk, Li Qing, and William all made their own calculations. On the third day, the Turk agreement was signed. Haha, this is Mr. Zhang Dongxiu, he is really burly. The army general looked at the burly Zhang Dongxiu with a little surprise. He thought Li Qing would send a lawyer or a workplace elite, but he didn't expect to send a big man. It was just that the bodyguards around him were a little unreliable. The army general glanced at the crow, only to see that the crow stood beside Zhang Dongxiu, looking around like a street urchin. The signing ceremony went smoothly. The two sides exchanged the agreement and shook hands enthusiastically. Especially the army general, he felt very comfortable now. He finally tricked the new world. This time Li Qing was destined to suffer a loss. Mr. Zhang Dongxiu, let's go. Let's eat something together. We have prepared a sumptuous lunch for you. The army general said with a fake smile. Mr. Acting President, wait a moment. I still need to borrow your precious land to sign an agreement. Zhang Dongxiu smiled politely. The army general's eyes were full of doubts. Sign again. Look, he's coming. Zhang Dongxiu waved to the blonde and blue-eyed foreigner who was walking over. Mr. James, here. The army general looked at Mr. James who was walking over, and felt more and more that something was wrong. Agreement, could it be? He remembered that the day before yesterday Li Qing specifically asked him if he could authorize a third party. The army general's face changed slightly, and a stiff smile appeared on his face. Who is this? Mr. Acting President, let me introduce you to our third party, Exxon Petroleum Development Company of the United States. Zhang Dongxiu introduced him. The army general's face turned livid. Of course he had heard of this company, the #1 oil company in the United States. He looked at Zhang Dongxiu and then at James, and everything became clear. He was tricked by Li Qing. What made him most angry was that these two people actually wanted to sign an agreement in front of him. They were really stupid.